Now, so what I'm going to talk to you about today is the Community Climate Action Programme. So what I'll try and cover is the background to the programme, what community groups it's targeted at, the funding available, what kind of projects it's looking for, and then how you can apply and how projects will actually ultimately be selected. I'll kind of give a bit of an approximate timeline for the programme in Waterford. And then I also want to touch a little bit on other programs and funding that is available because it might be of interest to some of you. And then at the end, I'll stop the recording and people can ask questions or we can have a chat about the programme. So the Community Climate Action Programme, it came about ultimately because of Ireland taking action against climate change. So Ireland has set itself some pretty ambitious and legally binding targets around climate action. So aiming for a 51% reduction by 2030 of GHG emissions and then reaching climate neutrality and resilience by 2050. So in all these plans of how to get ourselves there, how to transition to this low carbon society, the Department of the Environment carried out these climate conversations. So they happened in 2021 and 2022. And basically what it was the department went out and sought feedback from over 4,000 people about how they saw this transitioning happening. Like, how are we going to get to 2030 and 2050? And two of the key findings from these public consultations was, first of all, citizens want to take action, but they need support to do it. So from this came the Community Climate Action Programme. So the Community Climate Action Programme is basically, it's funded ultimately from the Climate Action Fund. And 60 million has been given to the programme for the next 3 years. So we're in the first phase at the moment, and 30 million has been given for the next 18 months. So there's two strands, strand 1 and strand 2. Now, I'll just talk really super quick about strand 2. So strand 2, actually, it was all about kind of awareness building, some education pieces, toolkits for communities. 6 million was given to strand 2, and those projects actually started last year, and some of those are going to go on for the full 3 years. But strand 1 is the one that's important for all of us and what we're here to talk about today. So the aim of strand 1 and the whole Community Climate Action Programme in general is ultimately to support and empower communities in partnership with their local authorities to shape and build low carbon sustainable communities. So you're going to hear the phrase a lot around this programme, building low carbon communities. And this is what this whole programme is about. So 24 million of the fund is being allocated to strand 1. So that is, every local authority has been given a portion of the 24 million to support communities building their low carbon community. And strand 1A, it's very similar to strand 1. The only difference is that it's coming from the Shared Island Fund. And basically what it is just a community in the north will partner with a community in the south, and they'll both work on a similar climate action project together. Okay, so what does this programme specifically mean for Waterford? So ultimately under strand 1, 564,000 has been allocated to community groups for the next 18 months. And it's for the community groups that will be 100% funded to carry out direct climate action projects. Now, I'll get into that a bit more, exactly what that kind of means, this direct climate action project. Now, sorry, admit somebody there. Projects will be completed in 18 months, and then you'll be supported by Waterford Council. Now, strand 1A, no local authority has been given a pre-allocation for that. So there is a 3 million put away for strand 1A. Basically, any community across the whole Republic can apply for that one. And we're hoping that we'll have at least 1 or 2 applications going in under 1A and that they'll be selected. So I'll mainly be focusing on 1, but 1 and 1A, they're very, very similar. So what applies to 1 will apply to 1A. So what is the community groups that we're looking for? Basically, a community group has to be a not-for-profit. They have to be located in the operational area of Waterford City and County Council. They must be registered with a collective, so something like the PPN or Tidy Towns or the Wheel, or they could be a community group with articles of association or constitution. You have to hold an AGM and there must be minutes available for it. Now, so groups like charities, sports clubs, local environment groups, that's kind of community group. Communities who wouldn't be eligible would be basically private people, for-profit businesses, schools, and national level community environmental organisations. So who's eligible for Strand 1A? It's very similar, there's just two key differences. Because Strand 1A is a cross-border project, the scale is a bit different. So national level organisations can apply under 1A. And obviously, because it's a partnership project, you need a partner in the north. And that could be a not-for-profit, they can be a local authority, or they could be a local national group, but they have to be registered in Northern Ireland. And again, who wouldn't be eligible under 1A is private individuals, school, or for-profit businesses. Okay, so project sizes. So if they've broken them down into 3 project sizes. Small scale will be anything less than 20,000. Medium will be 20 to 50,000, and large scale will be 51 to 100,000. Eligible costs are basically costs that are for the sole purpose of implementing the project, and there'll be quarterly reimbursements upon meeting the agreed milestones. And again, communities have 18 months from their letter of offer to complete their project. Now, there is one thing, the Department of the Environment has requested that, they've requested it of all local authorities, that 10% of the allocation goes to small, 40% to medium, and 50% to large. So they are placing an emphasis on quite large, impactful projects. So if you do a little bit of quick math on that 564,000 that's been allocated to Waterford, it is potentially likely that maybe 3 to 4 projects will be selected under small, 4 to 5 projects under medium, and 3 to 5 under large. So ultimately, it could be anywhere from about 10 to 15 groups will actually get selected for the programme. Now again, these numbers are just estimates. The final selection may vary. It depends on where groups and their projects fall in the spectrum of the amount of funding. And the Department of the Environment also has, they did say that if it turns out there's an awful lot of medium, there's not many in large, or there's not many in small, that those percentages might be changeable. But again, just to bear that in mind. So we know who the programme is aimed at. We know what kind of project sizes they're looking for. So what kind of projects are eligible? So because this is being funded from the Climate Action Fund, there's very specific projects that are only eligible to for that fund. So I'm going to just go through them just very briefly. But all your projects, they would fall under this. So say you need to be reducing or supporting the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So an example of meeting that objective would be replacing an oil boiler with a heat pump. You need to be increasing the production or use of renewable energy, like putting solar panels on your roof. Improving energy efficiency, be retrofitting your building. Increasing climate resilience, putting in flood protections. Identifying nature-based projects that enhance biodiversity or increase GHG sinks or support climate resilience. A really simple example of that is planting native trees. Or it could be assisting regions in the state or sectors where they're going to be negatively probably impacted by the transition to being a low carbon economy. So an example of that would be not within maybe the this program, but say programs that upskill and retrain workers, say who currently work in like fossil fuel areas, that they will have other employment opportunities in 2030 and 2050. And again, if you can somehow be very innovative and target A to F, that is great. But you must at least be hitting one of those objectives. And that is ultimately the projects would be delivering on climate action. So the Department of the Environment came up with 5 programme themes for this. So the first is home and energy, the second is travel, the third is food and waste, The fourth is shopping and recycling. And the fifth is local climate and environmental actions. So besides hitting one of those 7 of the Climate Action Fund, really your real focus should be kind of the program themes. So ultimately your project should be able to fall under one of these themes, but a project is more likely to be successful if it includes more than one theme. So say the likes of home and energy. So many of Ireland's buildings aren't very efficient, and most are still actually powered by fossil fuels. And heat loss is a really big issue in Ireland, and about 10% of Ireland's GHG emissions come from heating. So this theme is all about addressing how we can make our buildings more efficient, how we can power them in low carbon or zero carbon ways. Travel, it would be, as the name suggests, it's all about our emissions from travel. A lot of us, myself, we're very reliant on our cars, but it's getting out of those cars, getting good active travel modes, using public transport. So because like 20% of Ireland's emissions are coming from travel, so it's really an important area of our lives we need to tackle. So food and waste. So obviously the production of food, it's a huge scale, and the energy required and the resources required to get the food on our plates at home can be a huge amount. And an awful lot of food is actually wasted in the world. So about 1/3 is wasted. I think the figure is in Irish homes, we throw out, hopefully the brown bin, about 700 to maybe €1,000 worth of food every year. So it's addressing that kind of way that we live as well. Shopping and recycling. This is basically kind of around consumption and how we use and dispose as well of the materials. So when you think shopping and recycling, this theme, think very much, I'm sure you've heard about it coming up much more, the circular economy. So it's basically how we use our things, how we can reduce using them, how we can reuse them, how we can repair them, how we can remanufacture them, refurbish them. So it's basically the idea of how can we stop taking virgin resources from the earth and instead use what we have and keep it just moving within our society. Now, local climate and environmental action, the last theme, this is ultimately about how we interact with nature, how we can positively harness it. So this is very much, it could be climate resilience projects. So say if some areas are at risk of flooding, I'd be looking at ways of addressing that. It could be things just our connection with nature. That this theme is quite broad. Now, what I'll do is I'll delve into them just a little more. What we'll do is we'll look at kind of project examples to give kind of sense of what community groups could do around these areas. So home and energy, again, this is all just addressing emissions around buildings and how they're powered. So interesting projects could be like an LED community lighting scheme, so replacing old lights with LED. It could be a small community renewable energy project, it could be retrofitting community buildings, and perhaps a community EV charging point. So actually, I'm going to look into just a little more about the project in Kilkenny. So SOS Kilkenny is a facility where they provide services to adults with intellectual disabilities and autism. And they did some major works a few years ago. So their building has about like a 6-building complex. 4 of the buildings, what they chose to do was they took out the old storage heaters and they put in district heating. 2 of the buildings, they switched from oil to gas heating. They retrofitted much of the building. They put in LED lights. And ultimately, they have an annual save of about €9,000 a year on their energy bills. And actually, a lot of their workers and their users found that the building was much warmer, much more comfortable to be in. So I think that there's always that kind of, it's great, we need to be reducing our emissions, but there's loads of other benefits that come from these type of actions as well. So the second program theme is all around travel. So project ideas could be, say, cycle parking. It could be improving access to cycleways, maybe a community car, community electric vehicle, safer active travel routes to schools. So these are just two really interesting examples. First of all, so Moray Car Share. This is from a community in Scotland, and basically it's a community-based, community-owned social enterprise, which was set up in 2007. And basically it provides cars, electric bikes, trailers, camper vans, for people to rent. So it's become hugely popular, and every year they're kind of adding to what they can offer. And now they have about 300 members. So what they actually, one of the things that people noted was that a lot of families use the service who do have a car, but they actually said it really helped preventing the need to own the second car when you might only need it once or twice a week. So basically it works like a lot of other car hire companies. You basically book your slot, you pick up your car, and then you can drop it back. Now the San Francisco project, I just want to draw your attention to it just very briefly, because I think it's a great example of how climate action projects can also be kind of fun. They can be, and they can also use many different members.
I sent that around because it took me so long.
You can use like many different members of society can get involved in the project. So it was the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency partnered up with a business owner, an art bar, and they basically changed one car parking spot into a spot for 12 bikes to park up. And they got a local artist to design the mural asphalt underneath. And it's just really colourful, and that'll last for, I think it's 10 to 20 years at least. Now, so food and waste. Some interesting projects around this one could be things like community composting facilities, community gardens, allotments, food pledges, food markets, community fridges. Actually, they're coming much more popular, especially you see them popping up a lot more in, say, England and Europe as well. So you're probably all, well, from Waterford, you might be familiar with the top of the city community gardens. They did great work transforming a totally derelict space into a community allotment. And it's also a garden as well. They now have 14 raised beds. They've got an ornamental section with biodiversity. They've planted loads of pollinator friendly plants. They've got a rainwater and a composting system. That it's great to see the work that can be done in an urban setting. The other example I'll just talk about very briefly is an urban setting actually, and it was a European research project. It was in the city of Nitra in Slovakia, and basically they got 50 households to sign up. What they did was they put in these 3-chamber composters. You see it there on the screen. So basically it was run by volunteers, and each household was given instructions on how to use the chambers, also what you can compost, what you can't compost. They were given a bucket and a key. And what they do is they put their green waste, their bio waste kind of into one chamber, and then when it's full, they move on to the next one and so on. It ended up being hugely successful, and they actually got another 60 households to sign up, and they put in another composter. So there's just different projects to kind of inspire you. So shopping, again, this is all thinking reducing what we use, repairing, reusing, sharing. I think we're all like, there's that question of, do we all need a drill? Do we all need a lawnmower? Do we all need those random things that we might buy in the middle aisle? But could we share them amongst ourselves? So project examples would be community repair hubs. They could be setting up a swap shop. It could be water refilling stations. Just that's those simple actions of providing ways for people not having to go buy the bottle of water if they forget to bring them with them. Or it could be single-use plastic elimination in businesses and communities. There's loads of options in this area. So the Carrigamoss Toy Library, it's a great initiative in Monaghan, and it is run by a community group. Basically, they've set up a toy lending service. So parents pay a small membership fee to kind of repair and replace broken toys, but then they can basically borrow toys, puzzles, game, the selection is actually great for up to 3 weeks at a time. So they'll go online, they select their item, and they book it out. And actually, it's a really great service. And because the community group wanted to tackle the fact that there's an awful lot of toys around, children might not use them for very long, and they're actually very, very difficult to recycle. So it was a great way to bring the circular economy into that community. You might often hear the phrase library of things, and it's the exact same way. You can see them popping up in different places. Sometimes they're much more based around like tools and things like that, but this group is specifically looking at toys. And then Revolve Paint. So this is from a group, Cycle Sense, in Skibbereen in Cork. And basically they did this really interesting thing, and it's all around Waterford and actually all around Ireland. And there is, I think Renew and Waterford are also doing it now. Basically, they go and collect water-based paints from specific recycling centres. So I think we've all been in that place where you paint a room, you've got a bit of paint left, and you're like, well, sure, that won't paint another room. I'll just throw it out. But these paints, those resources, they are perfectly able to be used again. We shouldn't be just disposing of it. So what Cycle Sense do is they filter the paint, they remix it, and they make a range of colours. So then this paint is then they're able to sell it back to their communities, back to individuals, and it's suitable for interior walls and ceilings. So the last theme. So this is all again about positively engaging and harnessing nature. So really nice community-based examples of this could be things like mini forests. So could be, God, I think land as small as even half a tennis court can put in a mini forest. So basically they're kind of planted in layers. They're great because trees are great carbon sinks, but they're also great sources of biodiversity. Forest schools, you've got dispersed orchards, community gardens again, roof gardens, pollinator projects, and then general climate resilience projects. These could all fall under this theme. So Monaghan actually, let me go back there. Monaghan, I think this is a great example of a dispersed urban orchard. So basically Monaghan Tidy Towns has been doing great work on their biodiversity since about 2010. They were planting pollinator plants, they were kind of maintaining the biodiversity along their own greenway. And they also, one of the big things was they did an ecological study that pointed out like the key habitat spaces in their community. So what they wanted to do in around 2014 is they wanted a way to create routes between these key habitats and then along the greenway. So a way to connect them that pollinators, so basically the bees, could all get around very easily. So, but the challenge was that between there was loads of gaps between these key habitat spaces, and in the gaps were basically residential houses. So they needed to find a way to create the corridors. Basically what they did was they got a load of fruit trees. They went to, I think it was their super value on a Saturday, and they told the community they could come and collect fruit trees. And they were kind of worried that actually wouldn't be very popular. They ended up being really popular. They had to run it for a second week. And basically people just went home and planted fruit trees in their gardens. And basically it did create a dispersed urban orchard for all the pollinators. And then the Mary Immaculate College, Mary I in Limerick, so they took part in Antashka's educational programme LEAF, and part of that was actually planting over 100 native trees on their college campus. So, like I said, all project ideas should fall under one theme, but it would be more advantageous if they hit multiple themes. So this is a very rough example. This is like very rough example. You wouldn't have to do all of this. This is just to kind of get you thinking on what kind of scale and range you could work on. So say a community, they've got a building and they've got grants. What they could decide to do is under theme one, maybe they have some retrofitting work they need to do in their building. They could do that. They could replace any existing lighting with LED. They might choose to put in a solar panel. Under theme two, they might say, you know what, maybe more people would cycle to our place if there was actual cycle parking. So they might install one of those. They might put in an EV charging point. Under theme three, they might say, we've got a bit of land, we'll put in a garden allotment. Under theme four, they might say, you know what, we're going to do a monthly repair cafe, and we'll put in the water refilling stations as well, maybe inside, maybe outside. And then just say, loads of land in this example, they'll also put in a mini forest thing. And that would be an example, very, again, hypothetical example of a large scale project. So that could be potentially somewhere between 80 to 100,000. But I think it's just really important as well to point out how the themes can be connected. So say putting in an EV charging point connects with theme 1 of the kind of energy. Food and waste, the garden allotments, connects with theme 5, local climate and environmental action, because again, it's our interaction with the environment. And theme 4 and theme 3 are ultimately connected because it's how we're using resources and everything. So that's just, again, just an example and just to show you how interconnections can happen. This is not a prescription on what you need to do with your community group. So I just want to say a quick thing about projects under Strand 1A. Again, this is when a community in the south and a community in the north will carry out similar projects together. So the Department of Environment has suggested that, again, because just the scale and scope is a smidge different under this strand, these are potential project ideas that communities could also consider under this programme. It could be things like valuing networks for nature, very like kind of say the Monaghan project we discussed, sustainable farming, a just transition for farming and agriculture, peatland restoration, renewable energy, flood forecasting, coastal erosion. They're just things to maybe consider as well under 1A if you were interested. Okay, so if you decide this is maybe something you would be interested in doing as a community group, how can you apply? Well, you've done the first step. You are attending one of our information events about it. The next step is to contact myself, Community Climate Action Officer, and we can discuss your project. And then what you can do is you can complete and submit your expression of interest form. Now, so on your expression of interest form, I just want to touch on this very briefly, just to kind of give you a sense of what you'll be doing. Basically, the details about your group, who you are, where you are, what you do, kind of what you'd expect. Section 2 will go into your project details. So basically, that's describing your project. Basically, have it very clear on what it is, but also why it should be done, why it's important, what themes it's connecting with. And then the cost, also obviously an accurate budget for your project. Now, medium to large projects will have to go into a bit more detail. It'll be things about achievability, like how will your project get over the line in 18 months? The necessity for grant funding. Why do you need this fund to carry out the work for your community? Impact. This will be, again, how is your project going to contribute to the national climate objectives, Waterford Council's climate objectives, the impact it'll have on your community and the environment in general. Innovation and scalability. So this is, community groups are all unique, but there's a lot of things that we share in common that we can learn from other groups. So if your project is very innovative, or if it's scalable, this is what you know, like the community. There's a lot of things we can share, and what a community does in Waterford, a community in Tipperary could do, and vice versa. Value for money. This is very much that your costs are reasonable. You follow procurement guidelines, etc. And governance is basically how your group is organised and how it will be organised during the project. Now, state aid and de minimis. So I'll only briefly touch on this. State aid, it might not be, and it probably won't be an issue for a lot of groups. Basically, state aid is to ensure that there's no unfair advantage given to one group over another. It's a bit of like to ensure fairness in the free market in Europe. If your group engages in economic activity that goes beyond local, then this might become just something we have to consider. Now, you'd still be eligible for funding, but what happens then is you'll get into de minimis, a de minimis area. So basically, under de minimis funding, you can only receive a cap of 200,000 over 3 years. But again, we can look at this on a community and project basis. I would suspect that a lot of community groups won't be affected by this. We would ask that every group tell us if they have received de minimis funding. That'll be very easy for you to find out. Any funding that you've received should say on the grant form or the letter of offer, this falls under de minimis funding. but I'm just going to park that here and we can discuss that much later when you're putting in your expression of interest forms. And then ultimately you'll just declare it, and either be maybe your chairperson, your treasurer, that everything you're submitting is correct and you've got all your supporting documentation. So when it comes to you preparing your expression of interest form, preparation is really important. Basically, be really clear about what does your project want to do? Why is it needed? Do you know how to apply? Have you met me, the Community Climate Action Officer? And have you asked all the questions you want to ask? So the costs, understand what's eligible, make sure you've got a realistic and accurate budget, and follow public procurement guidelines. So when you're kind of getting an idea of your costs, you will need to follow those. So say if we go for medium and large first, quick look at that. Anything less than 5,000, you just need one quote. If it's goods or services, anything between 5 to 25, you're going to need 3. And of that, you will have to go on e-tenders. Now you can set up, anybody can set up a profile on that, but you kind of probably need to advertise on that for probably about 30 days. So just bear that in mind in the time frame. For works or works related services, from 5 to 50,000, you're going to need 5 quotes. And above that, again, back onto e-tenders for about 30 to 35 days. Now they have, for the small projects, you see I have a little star. So typically in public procurement, less than 5,000 is one quote. But the Department of the Environment has asked that if community groups can get 3 quotes for things less than 5,000, they should. It is just to make sure the guidelines are being followed. And say if a project is going for 4,000, they would only then have to get 1 quote. But it'd be best to just make sure that value for money is being got. Now, again, if there's certain situations where that might be very difficult or very tricky or very onerous, you can contact myself and we can see what can be done about that. And when you're completing your form, so you've got your planning done, you know what your project is, you know what your costs are going to be, and you're completing your form, really understand the program's objectives, the selection criteria, and be really clear, scripted, and just have it that we understand perfectly what your project is going to be, and know the deadline, and make sure your supporting information is also there. So how will projects be selected? For a project to be successful, it basically has to get through the evaluation, selection, and approval stage. So the evaluation stage is basically every expression of interest will be reviewed and assessed by Waterford Council against evaluation criteria that the Department of the Environment has provided. And this is just to determine if the project is even suitable for funding. So you'll actually see it falls very much on 1 and 1A this year. It's very similar. Innovation, scalability, value for money, impact, achievability, governance, partnership approach. It's very similar to the expression of interest form. So to be deemed eligible for funding projects, the expressions of interest, you have to achieve at least 50% and the minimum requirements. And then groups will be selected by Waterford Council. So it won't just be the highest percentage projects are selected. We will have to take account of desirability to fund a variety of projects, and the geographical distribution of projects, and also the contribution of projects to the climate action objectives of the council. Actual final approval does not rest with ourselves. It's actually the Minister of the Environment, Climate and Communications who will ultimately decide what projects are approved and if there's any specific conditions of funding. Now, so an approximate timeline. So the application window isn't actually opened yet. We're waiting to get some final agreements in place with the Department of the Environment. I would say likely it'll be in the next few weeks. Communities will be given 10 weeks to submit their application. So that's not 10 weeks from today. It is 10 weeks from when we open the call. So I would suspect it'll be in the next couple of weeks, and then it'll be mid to end May. But we will let you all know about all those dates. Next week, what I'll do is I'll circulate the documents. So that'll be things like this presentation, which is also being recorded. We'll give you the case studies I discussed. We've got a document up on those and a few other ones that you can kind of learn about, and also other forms that you're going to find helpful. On the 25th of March, I just want to draw your attention to this. We're going to host a community development project workshop. So basically, there'll be a morning workshop in person We just need to confirm a few details, but it'll probably be in kind of County Waterford. And it'll basically be a brainstorming session. We'll have speakers in on the different themes. We'll talk about what has worked, what hasn't worked for different communities. It'll give you time to kind of hash out ideas and kind of work on your own project. The evaluation and selection by ourselves, the council, is going to take about 6 to 8 weeks just to get through everyone. And then approval by the department, we have been advised to give about 10 to 12 weeks for that. So then kind of looking at it, the letter of offer won't be going out probably till the end of the year. So groups won't even be starting their project till the end of the year for this program. So it just, I know we're in March, but it is going to be a slightly long time frame. Now, so you've heard me, you're interested, what are the next steps? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you, I'll put a link in the chat at the end of the event. Basically, it will give you an opportunity to sign up for our mailing list. And also, if you want to organise a meeting with myself, then we can start talking about your project ideas. I think then the next important step is going back to your community group, seeing what they want to do. What is their holistic vision for their community over the next few years? Like, how does your community see 2030, getting to 2030 and getting to 2050? And then, again, making sure you've got a meeting organised with myself, and then start planning your project. But again, give yourself time, especially for the medium and large scale projects. There could be a lot of work or costing involved. So just, even though you have 10 weeks, really give yourself time. Now, I just want to point out one other thing. There is other public funding and other programs available, and I'm sure many of you are probably already familiar with them because you've been working in this area for a long time in your communities. But depending on what interest you have, there are different support schemes out there. And what I'll do is I will send this all on, but it is something that I just want to bring your attention to, that if you either maybe choose not to go with this program, or you feel, or you're not selected at the end, that there are other options out there, and there's different ones that have a very different focus. And actually, I just want to point out the Better Energy Community one specifically. So Waterford Council will be putting in an application around April. So if you have a community building which does need retrofitting work carried out, get in touch with us. We'll be putting it in an application and are looking for communities. Now, applying for that and maybe successfully getting it does not rule you out for this program either. It just means we can't be funding the same work. So say if it's table and chairs, one program can fund the table, but someone else has got to fund the chairs. That's just a thing to consider. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording, and if anybody has.
Do you want to, sorry, Susan, do you want to maybe have Yvonne present very quickly, and then we have questions on both presentations. So Yvonne Byrne, thank you, Susan. Yvonne Byrne is just going to speak for very quickly for 2 or 3 minutes, Yvonne, if you wouldn't mind.
It's perfect, because it is about the kind of connects with better energy communities.
Yeah.
As well.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Susan and Grania, and thank you very much for allowing me to present at your event this afternoon. What I wanted to do is just for a few moments go through the Sustainable Energy Community Programme, which might be of interest to many of you here. I was particularly interested in the poll result with over 50% interested in the energy. So yeah, that was interesting to see. I'll share my slides. Let's see if that works. Yeah, hopefully. Host. Okay, I think, Susan, it's not letting me. It says the host has disabled participant screen sharing, so maybe you have to share it from your end. Just while Susan's looking into that, just to give you a bit of background, the Sustainable Energy Community Programme is administered by SEAI nationally. It's been going on for 4+ years, and it's a national scheme that is aiming to support communities become more environmental and particularly more energy aware. Thanks, Susan. That looks great. So the first slide that you see here that just gives you a national perspective of the Sustainable Energy Community Programme. You can see that there's over 700 communities that have signed up for it nationally. In terms of how it's administered in the Southeast region, the Southeast Energy Agency is the regional coordinator, and then there is a mentor like myself for each county. So I have the responsibility for County Waterford, and then I have colleagues in Wexford, Carlow and Kilkenny. We would meet usually every 2 weeks to share best practice, case studies, information on grants or supports that we can give to groups. So it's a very useful structure, so that if we get any queries or inquiries from communities like yourselves, we can try and see, one, what's the best practice across the region or further afield nationally, and then how we can advise you further. You can see on the slide that we talk about energy master plans, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but there's 100 that have been completed so far, and there's a further 72 communities that are currently completing their energy master plans. Do you want to do the next slide there, Susan? Thanks. So getting down to County Waterford, and where are we? This map here gives you a visual idea of the different communities that have registered to be sustainable energy communities. And the different colours that you see there denote what stage they're at. So if we look at the blue ones, firstly, the blue ones show the communities that have completed their energy master plans and are actually moving on to the project stage. So something like this grant scheme that Susan spoke about is perfect for those type of communities, as well as, of course, all the others that are here or maybe at different stages of the Sustainable Energy Community Programme. So we have 3 that are at the do stage. And then in terms of the learn stage, those are groups that are currently doing research on energy in their locations and are looking at whether they want to become and complete an energy master plan. And then finally, the plan stage, we have just one of those, the Green Deal. They've recently been approved for their energy master plan, and they're going to be at the stage of recruiting a consultant to look at the part of the Waterford City. It's around the cultural quarter of Waterford City, and they're going to be looking at the current energy use in the area and then potential projects that will either make their buildings more energy efficient or look at micro renewable energy projects, potentially look at smart technologies and how they can use energy more efficiently, or sustainable transport. So that could be walking, cycling, EV charging points, etc. Okay. So finally, the last stage, just to give you a little bit more detail about what a sustainable energy community looks like. So in terms of where is it geographically, it can be a village, it can be a cluster of villages, it could be a town, or it could be, usually it wouldn't be a whole city, it would more likely be a part of a city. So for example, the Green Deal project I spoke about is the cultural quarter, so it's several streets within one part of the city. And then in terms of who it involves, it's all components of your particular geographical area. So that would be homeowners, it would be the schools, businesses, community groups, and visitors if it's a tourism location. And as I spoke about, there's 3 phases to the sustainable energy community that typically takes about 4 years to go through. And the first phase is the learn, where you get a sense of your community, how much energy is being used, what your typical priority projects might be. You then apply for funding through SEAI to complete an energy master plan. That is 100% grant aided. And we're very fortunate in Waterford that we have a memorandum with the local authority. So the local authority assists with the bankrolling of that. So to draw down the funding from SEAI, the consultant has to be paid first. But in this example, the local authority will do that so that it doesn't cause any cash flow issues for the community. Once your energy master plan is completed, you can then move on to the do phase. But what I often encourage groups that I work with is that I would suggest that they actually start looking particularly at smaller projects that they know are of high priority in parallel or in tandem to the plan phase. And then in terms of stakeholders, we're working very closely with the local authorities. And I would see us working hand in hand with something like the Community Climate Action Fund programme. Also Waterford Leader, they were instrumental in supporting the Blackwater Valley project, and Waterford Chamber are instrumental to the Green Deal project. And then a wide range of grant agencies. Susan showed a very good slide with all the different grants that are there. And part of my role is to work with the communities to assist them in applying for grants, both through SEAI or others that might be relevant to them. So if you think you're interested in signing up to a Sustainable Energy Community Programme, it is free, and my time with yourselves is free as well. Obviously, there's some constraints on my time, but it is freely available advice. And my details are at the bottom of this slide, so you can see my email address there. So I know Grania and Susan will be sharing these slides with you. So if it's of interest to you, please do get in touch, and I can talk you through how you register with SEAI and what the next steps are. And if there's any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Many thanks.
Great, thank you, Yvonne. So that's just to let everyone know that there are opportunities to get a bit more support from people who are specialists in areas of energy and different things. So Susan, I don't see, we'll go to the questions and answer session.